Welcome back, everyone. As promised, we are going to be talking in this half hour with a Shakespearean trained actor who is bringing the Bible alive all over the country, and he's coming to Alexandria. It's fantastic. We have on the line with us Mark Price. Good morning, Mark.
Well, good morning, Alexandria. How are you today?
We're doing wonderful. We're not under snow like we were a couple days ago. And from California, I imagine...
For a guy who's born and raised in Southern California, that's not that appealing.
No. Listen, but we got rid of it just in time for you to arrive.
Thank you. As it should be.
It took a little act of Congress, but it's happening. Mark, let's talk about this. Now, I mentioned the Bible coming alive with what you do. Could you describe a little bit all these characters? You have 8 or 9 characters that you portray from the Bible, and I've seen the video and I've watched it, and the different accents and dialects that you're able to come up with and the character. How difficult was that did you just grab one and say, this is what I believe he would sound like, look like, act like, feel like?
Well, for example, St. Paul, who I've been doing for quite a few years, his accent, I try to get that Middle Eastern flair, and I got that from a taxi driver in New York City. So it's... most of the accents or the characters that I create, the concepts or the ideas are developed by people that I run into or people that I watch or people that I meet. I think it's important, and why I do what I do is I try to take the saints and take them off the pedestals and make them human beings, because I think that the greatest message from all of the people that I do, in fact, all of the saints, all of the people in history who followed God, was their humanity and how they rose above their humanity to serve God.
Yeah, they were average people. I mean, Peter, a fisherman, and it's just very interesting how you've done that. I hear a lot of people talk about how they've been encouraged to go back and read over the scriptures after seeing your portrayal of that character, of that biblical person. They said, I didn't see the humanity in it before. I just saw Bible reading. Now I see this is a human being that lived back then.
Yeah, one of the characters that I do, and I'm doing on Sunday night at 6:30 at St. Mary's there in Alexandria, is Judas Iscariot. And Judas Iscariot is one that, for any listeners that don't know, is the one that we know of having betrayed Jesus, and a betrayal that led to his arrest, beatings, and then crucifixion. And Judas is a character that many Christians throughout history have hated because of what he did, and yet I've taken the same approach to him that I've taken to Simon Peter or St. Paul or Francis of Assisi, for that matter, and said, what was the human side? What was it about the human nature that drove them to make the decisions that they made? You or I are going to make choices and decisions in our life. We can make good ones, we can make bad ones. We can be a good example, we can be a bad example, but we're going to be an example nevertheless. And so Judas is interesting because in my 45 years of doing this, 45 years in ministry, I believe that Judas has changed more hearts, more minds, more lives than any of the other characters that I do, just simply because I make him human. I don't make him a devil, I make him human with the same sort of traits that you and I have, like pride and ego and having that be the reason for his fall. And so then people can relate to it a little bit more and say, wait a minute, I suffer from what Judas suffered from.
Okay, well, let's talk about there's several opportunities, multiple characters. You'll have, I believe, 4 different characters that you'll portray during your time here in Alexandria, starting with Sunday night, as you said, Judas Iscariot. Now, this is at the Church of St. Mary here in Alexandria, and they're going to start things out with a light supper at 5 o'clock. The public is invited to this. Everyone is invited to this. And then for an hour and a half.
And there's no cost. It's free.
So, again,
it's
just
free, yes.
Come on in.
Go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but then we go to Monday night at Simon Peter, and this is you'll simply do your message again for an hour and a half. That starts at 6:30, as will the next 2 nights, 6:30. But there's also a presentation that you're going to do Tuesday at 11:45. A lot of things to remember here. I'll go over these later. But at 11:45, there's bring your own lunch. Beverages are going to be provided, but a presentation, Believe and Achieve. What's that all about?
I believe that as people of faith, we're called to believe, and we're asked, do we believe? Do we believe in God? Do we believe in a forever after? Do we believe that something exists beyond this? And a lot of us will say we believe, and a lot of us want to believe, but how do we know that we really believe? Are we living our lives in a way that suggests that, hey, I get it. Yes, I do believe in this person called Jesus. I do believe in God. I do believe in what the Bible says. So I'm going to give at that talk, 11:45, on at the church in the Great Hall, a talk. I'll provide 4 ways that we can look at our own lives and determine whether or not we truly believe.
And then
so much is connected to whether or not we believe. I mean, it says that we attain heaven, we attain hereafter if we believe. And so, are we living our lives truly as people who believe? There was a saying that I always liked that said, Patty O'Shea went to church every Sunday. When he died, he went to hell for what he did on Monday.
Yeah, didn't stick too long. So getting that belief, it will motivate and it'll inspire you to do the next thing that follows with what you've read. Let's go into Tuesday night. You're going to go after that presentation over the noon hour, lunch hour. That night, again, you'll be portraying St. Paul. And what is it about St. Paul? Again, here's a very, the most pivotal change, I think, in the New Testament is going from Saul to Paul, that transition. So talk about that character and why he's important.
Well, half of what we call the New Testament are the books from Paul, the letters from Paul. And Paul did, as you say, play a pivotal role, and he was able to play that role because of, as you point out, the transition that was in his own life. And again, I try to bring out the personal side and bring out things that people really didn't think of. For example, the second night, on Monday night, I'm doing Simon Peter. A lot of people don't know that Simon Peter was married. The Bible does not mention a wife, but it does mention a mother-in-law. And I've come to find you don't get one without the other.
Exactly.
So,
right. Okay.
And things like that I'll bring out in the performance. With Paul, I bring up a lot of the human side. How it felt when he changed. How it felt when he finally said yes to Jesus, and how his friends turned on him, and how that made him feel. What it was like to come face to face with Simon Peter, who he had been saying all kinds of bad things about, and Simon Peter really didn't like him either for obvious reasons. His responsibility for the death of St. Stephen and his hunting down and arresting other Christians. So there was this tension between Peter and Paul, and my Paul will talk about how it felt when he came to talk to Peter and met Peter for the first time. He'll talk about his travels, his going to Athens, his going to Corinth, his going to Galatia, his what we call his missionary tours. He's going to talk about all of that along the way. But again, he talks about it from the human perspective. He opens up by talking about women, because for years, centuries, I can't tell you how many women I've met that said, I really don't like Paul. Paul hated women, they would tell me. And I'd say, well, I know that people say that, but in actual fact, Paul raised up women to a greater degree than was common in his day. Remember, it was very much of a patriarchal society. And Paul brought women in. He ordained women. He called women to the ministry. He names many women in his writings, which was not done in that time. So Paul actually has gotten a bad reputation, I think, an undeserved one. And he's going to talk about it. He'll confront. Okay, how many women out there don't like me? Why don't you like me? And he's going to let the women tell them why they don't like him, and then he's going to tell them why they're wrong.
Does that go over well? Where they tell them that they're wrong?
Yeah, well, it does. Because in the end, what I get is, more than anything, hey, I didn't look at it that way. Hey, I didn't think of it that way. Thanks for giving me another avenue. like for example, back to Judas, who I do Sunday night at 6:30. Judas, I'm not trying to say Judas was right. In fact, I believe that that there are consequences for our actions, and I'm not letting them off. I'm just saying let's look at them a little bit differently. Let's take the devil horns off of him and look at him as a human being, and realize that Jesus loved him. So maybe we should be more open in our hearts to what love really means, even with people like Judas.
Now, Mark, you're going to cap off the week here in Alexandria on Wednesday night. There will be a lot of young people, probably the middle school and high school students there as well as the public invited. And you're going to cap it off with St. Francis of Assisi. And is there a particular reason why you chose that one to cap things off, or is that something you commonly do for each one?
No. I ended it with that one. I let the churches or the groups that bring me in pretty much choose what they want. Of all the characters or portrayals that I do or the talks that I give, I make recommendations, but then I leave it up to them as to what they think would work best with their community. Francis of Assisi is a good one to end with in the sense that he is probably, of all the people that I do, most like us. He was not a person who knew Jesus personally. He was a person who came from a very wealthy family in Assisi, which the area we know as Italy today. And he was a person who gave all that up. He's a person who went to war. He's a person who didn't like school, who didn't like to read, went to 2 wars as a knight, and then felt the call to God through Jesus, and changed his life completely. Gave up the money, gave up the life that he knew to become a beggar. And what's fascinating to me about Francis is that at a time, and he was born in 1180s and died in 1224. During that time in history, there was no mass communication. There was no Facebook or Twitter or any of the other stuff.
Right.
In 10 years from when he started his ministry in 1209, in 10 years by 1219, he had 15,000 followers. 15,000 men and women joined his order. And so he's a fascinating guy. He's the first person in history to have the stigmata, the holes in the hands and the feet to represent the crucifixion of Jesus. He wrote very little, but what he wrote has stuck with us throughout history. His prayer that he wrote, that he prayed every single day, almost, not every day, but usually he prayed, is, Lord, let me experience your suffering on the cross. And Lord, let me experience the love in your heart which allowed you to endure the cross. Now that's a powerful prayer. And in the end, he got that. He suffered greatly. He died a young man. He had malaria. He had leprosy. He was thin from malnutrition. So he did get his prayer answered, and he did suffer. But he also experienced the love of Christ and gave it to everyone around him.
An interesting prayer to make, and then to know that it could possibly come true, to know that was his path. We're going to talk. Can you hold with us just a little bit longer, Mark?
Of course.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a business downtown in Alexandria here for just a moment, and that is Ace Hardware. It's the helpful place. They have red hot buys going on now through the end of October, which is only, 16 days away. You can buy all sorts of items, and right now you can get Rust-Oleum Protective Spray Enamel. You can get 2 of those for $8, or buy 2 get 1 free. The Ace Basic Pleated Furnace Air Filters, or if you're sealing up the RV for the year, RV Antifreeze 2 for $6. Also, they have the Craftsman 16-gallon wet dry vac. You save $15 with your Ace reward card, so it's $79.99. This is a good one. Also, your choice, $99 each. Any of these DeWalt tools, you can get the DeWalt 20-volt max cordless compact impact driver, the driver drill, or lithium-ion battery pack, 2-pack. That's all yours, your choice, for $99.99. All kinds of bird seed, front yard fun, especially with Halloween coming up. whether it's the 6-foot long animated air-blown black cat or the 7-foot tall kaleidoscope air-blown pumpkin reaper. Yikes. Scary stuff right there at Ace Hardware to help out with Halloween. How about your keys? We've talked about this before, but they have the keys for anything right now. Basically, anywhere from, let's see, they say they can cover 92% of the vehicles on the road today. That includes your fob keys. They can help you out at Ace Hardware. Just ask them, and within moments, you can just walk around a couple aisles, maybe look for the mailbox in aisle 8.
Yes, on the right-hand side.
On the right-hand side. Or whatever it is you're looking for, and they'll have the key made for you. Whether you're making paint up or whatever, it gives you time to walk around and browse. It is time to fertilize, especially after that scare last weekend. You better get going now. Turf Builder, winter, fall lawn food, Ace Winterizer, also the Scott's Turf Builder Winter Guard fall feed and weed and feed. All kinds of options for your yard. When it comes to raking up leaves, they can help you that way too. Ace Hardware is the helpful place. They are right here in Alexandria.
And in Long Prairie.
All right. Again, on the phone with us. Thanks, Mark, for hanging out with us as we talk today. You've been all over.
No, I'm glad I did. Now I know where to go when I'm there.
Yes, absolutely.
This is true.
And once you get in there too, Mark, get some of the Aussie licorice. It is fantastic.
Okay, I'll look for that.
Okay.
By the way, my mother was born in Minnesota.
Oh.
And my grandfather and my grandmother are both from Minnesota. In fact, my grandfather was a minor league, played for whatever the Minnesota Twins minor league team was back in 1925. And so I have a little history there. And a cousin of mine was a professor at St. Thomas in St. Paul for 40 years or something, forever.
So you have connections. So it'll be a homecoming of sorts for your DNA, at least, maybe a little bit of your bloodline.
Yeah, DNA homecoming. Because sadly, all the people that I have from there are long since gone.
Well, I'm sure there's many good memories, and there's a lot of memories, and there'll be memorable performances that you've done throughout your lifetime. You've been doing this since 1978. You've been speaking, at least. Have you been doing the performances as well, of part of your ministry? That entire time?
The performances started in 1983.
Okay.
Is when I added doing the performances. I always was in theater, as you mentioned in the introduction. I did Shakespeare for years. I love Shakespeare. In an interesting way, I love Shakespeare for the same kind of reason that I love the Bible, and that is that they both understood humanity. Both of them. The reason Shakespeare has lasted as long as he has, and the reason the Bible has and will continue, is because it really tells stories of human nature. And I think that's why both will sustain for their own reasons. But I think it's that understanding of the human nature and how it's human nature that pushes us in one direction or another. But yes, I've had a lot of wonderful experiences all over the place. I'll probably tell this at Mass, because I'm speaking at the Masses on Saturday evening at 5 and then the 2 on Sunday there at St. Mary's. And I'll probably tell this story again, but once I was doing Judas in Washington, D.C., and afterwards a guy came up to me, and as I was leaving, and he was crying, and he came over and he belted me in the mouth.
Oh.
And I said, why did you do that? He says, well, how dare you make excuses for that guy? And I said, I didn't make excuses. I made him human. And see, that sometimes touches people when we realize that just as Judas failed, we too can fail. And so it really affected this particular person in that way. So that's memorable because I got hit.
Right. Now you just kind of duck a little bit. You've got some training there.
That's right.
What are some other things?
You actually got belted in the mouth?
I actually got belted in the mouth and knocked me to the ground, and I got up and I said, why did you do that? And he said, how dare you make excuses? We ended up going and having coffee together, and I listened to him when we talked, and this particular person had a variety of other problems
it sounds
going
like
on.
It.
But,
wow. I just can't wrap my head around it.
It was his way of reaching out. Yeah, I'll tell you, you didn't ask this question, but one of the things with Christians is that sometimes people will think, well, they're these soft people. They always portray Christians as being people, well, they're in prayer. They don't live in the world. Being a Christian is tough. G.K. Chesterton said, it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting, but rather it's been found difficult and never really tried. And I think that that Christianity isn't all crosses and going to mass. It's living in the real world and being an example in the real world. And sometimes you get hit. Sometimes you don't eat. Sometimes there's all kinds of things that make it tough to be a Christian. But we're a Christian not because it's easy or tough, but because we truly do believe, and we want to live our life as people who believe.
You strike on something there, Mark, that's really interesting, because I think people, when they see Christians who have failed, they think that's what all Christians are like. But we're all flawed people, though. Isn't that kind of why you're trying to get yourself better?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, and that's why I do, in a nutshell, you summed up why I do these characters. I mean, when I do Simon Peter on Monday night, he'll tell you about the scene, many scenes where he failed. He fell short. He said the wrong thing. He did the wrong thing. I mean, there's a time when Jesus literally called him Satan. He said, "Get away from me, you Satan." Now, this is Simon Peter, who the Catholic Church looks at as the head of the church, the first in the long lineage of popes, and Jesus calls him Satan. So I think that people that will accuse Christians who fail or fall short as being hypocrites don't understand what being a Christian is. Being a Christian means, as the Bible says, that we're all going to sin. We all have sinned. We're all going to continue to sin. But it's not the focus on the sin. It's that you sin, you fall short, you make a mistake, then you pick yourself up and you go to the next step. You try again and you keep trying. It's for example, I believe there's a wonderful, wonderful painting a young boy gave me once. It's Judas hanging himself. He committed suicide, as we know. Mm-hmm. And he's hanging himself, and Jesus is underneath him, holding him up. And so he's there on the rope, dangling, but Jesus is lifting him up so he doesn't completely die. And Jesus is saying, "Come back to me, Judas. Come back to me."
Well,
what real Christianity is about isn't how many times we fall short or fail. It's how many times we come back.
Well, I'm going to ask you this last question before we run out of time here. As Mark Price, the actor, celebrates each birthday, do you ask yourself, am I going to start doing Moses characters, or do you change who you're going to portray?
Well, I have such a love for Jesus that I do the people, and I've specifically chosen to do people who are connected more to Jesus. And Moses, of course, was Old Testament, wouldn't do that. However, one Old Testament character that I've been working on in my spare time for the last 40 years or so is Abraham. And the reason I like Abraham is really the cornerstone for all the great faiths, for Judaism, for Islam, and for Christianity. They all go back to Abraham. And I thought it would be great to do Abraham, and I could use him as a bridge, maybe to try to generate some sense of greater understanding, love, appreciation, respect for all the faiths.
Well, Mark, now we have to cut you off. We're running out of time. I want to make sure people know where they can see more of you, and that is
St. Mary's.
It's this upcoming Saturday, Sunday. He'll be at the masses, but Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday afternoon, and Tuesday evening and Wednesday evening, he'll be at St. Mary's. Go to stmaryalexandria.org for all the details. Thank you, Mark, for your time.
Thank you. God bless you both.
Thank you.
And is